Well, today's lecture, The Rule of Law in a Time of Terror, given by David Nevin, who's an associate professor of trial practice at the University of Idaho College of Law. Mr. Nevin has defended criminal cases in Idaho, the Pacific Northwest, and beyond for more than 25 years. He received acquittals in a number of high-profile prosecutions that implicated issues of civil rights and government overreach, including the 1993 Ruby Ridge case and the recent terrorism prosecution of a Saudi Arabian graduate student, Sami Omar al-Hussein. He was deputy Ada County public defender in Boise, Idaho for 3 years before forming his present firm in 1983. After law school, he served as an instructor of law at the University of Toledo College of Law in Toledo, Ohio, and as a law clerk for the Honorable Joseph J. McFadden, Justice of the Idaho Supreme Court. Nevin is a fellow and the current Idaho State Chair of the American College of Trial Lawyers, a founder and past president of the Idaho Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and the namesake of its annual Nevin Professional Award, which the organization awards to a criminal defense lawyer who's advanced the ideals of the profession. He serves as an adjunct professor of trial practice at the University of Idaho College of Law and has been qualified as an expert witness on the standards for constitutionally effective assistance of counsel in both capital and non-capital cases. He's a frequent lecturer and author on issues involving criminal law and civil rights, including appearances on National Public Radio and Court TV. His cases have been chronicled in Cyanide Cannery, American Islam, The Struggle for the Soul of Religion, Every Knee Shall Bow, Ambush at Ruby Ridge, and Devil's Advocates. Mr. Nevin received a BA in English from Colorado State University and a JD from the University of Idaho. Please join me in welcoming Mr. David Nevin.
Thank you very much. Can everybody hear me okay? Yes? Okay, good. So let me begin by just reminding you that when you come here today to listen to me speak, and when I stand up here and speak, we are exercising core First Amendment rights. Rights of expression, rights of assembly, the right to exchange ideas. Never forget that. It's just something that we take for granted in this country, and I think it's great that we do. But let's don't take it for granted just for about 30 seconds here. Very kind introduction, particularly the focus on my work as a law professor. Really, what I am is a criminal defense lawyer. And I do teach at the law school at the U of I, but basically, day in, day out, I handle criminal cases around the country, and I always defend. And one of the things that I'm doing right now, which I think is probably why you guys thought it might be interesting to hear what I have to say, is that I'm representing this man. Do you guys recognize him? This is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, also known as KSM. He's said to be the mastermind of September 11th. He had this rather unflattering photograph taken at the time of his arrest at 3 o'clock in the morning. And this is like a bad alarm clock, right? This is what you look like, I guess, when you get waked up and you get told, I'm sorry, but you're in custody now. And he is being prosecuted in a military commission at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. And since something like May of this past year of 2008, I've been living, I suppose I've spent about half my time at Guantanamo Bay. And every time I come back with a suntan, my wife says, well, so you weren't spending all your time meeting with your client. And Guantanamo Bay is a word, or is an idea that resonates around the world in a certain way. And so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Guantanamo Bay, what it's like there, what the United States has done, what the United States has been doing in the global war on terror, and how these cases have progressed and how they've developed. And I want to begin by giving you a disclaimer. And that disclaimer is this. I'm operating, and I'll talk more about the military commissions in a little while, but I'm operating under something that's called Protective Order Number 7. And Protective Order number 7 says that everything that this man says to me when I meet with him, every single word that he says to me, is classified at the top secret level with secure compartmented information endorsement on the TS. And I can't repeat anything that he says to me, to you or to anyone else. And this is literally, George Bush came into my cell and tortured me. Something big like that, and I can't tell you whether or not he likes peanut butter. I can't tell you anything that he said. And not only that, I cannot comment on publicly available, public source information that's available for anyone, books, newspaper articles, that kind of thing. I can't comment on those things in a way that would suggest that I am ratifying them or that I am saying that they are correct or something like that. And so I want to say at the outset, and it's very important to me to be able to say this, I want you to understand that nothing that I say here today is intended to either admit or deny that anything that's been reported about this man is true or not true. I'm going to have some discussions with you that I guess you would say are hypothetical in nature. That's a disadvantage. Sorry, guys. Am I still making sense to you? Okay, I'm just going to put it in my pocket this time instead of on my belt. So I don't want you to take anything that I say in that way. And this is very important to me because it's classified information. It's against the law to reveal classified information, and I don't intend to do that by anything that I say here today. You may observe, if you have spent any time dealing with criminal cases, I think some of you in the room may have done that, you may observe that when you can't repeat to anyone what your client says to you, it makes it a little difficult to defend the case. Let's just say I wanted to talk to my investigator in Pakistan and say, hey, Khalid says that Ahmed down at the corner grocery is somebody that we should talk to, and he says that he knew Ahmed and that Ahmed did this and Ahmed did that. I can't say that to the investigator. I have to be in a SCIF, a secure compartmented information facility, and I have to only talk to someone who also has a TSSCI clearance. So, among other things, this requirement that I'm describing to you is one that makes my life difficult, but it's one that, at least until it's changed, I fully intend to comply with, and no joke about that at all. According to the public source information, this man is 44 years old. He studied in the United States at Chowan College in North Carolina and also at North Carolina A&T. Graduated in 1986, I believe, with an engineering degree. And after that went back to Afghanistan and joined the Afghan Jihad. Some of you may be familiar with the Afghan Jihad. This is back in the period of time when Russia invaded Afghanistan. And naturally the Afghans didn't care very much for that. And this is the forerunners of the Northern Alliance. And actually, in some ways, I suppose you would say the forerunners of the Taliban. And Muslims, warlike jihad-making Muslims from all over the world came to Afghanistan to volunteer in the fighting. And the fighting was up and down, back and forth. It was kind of like the stock market until the Americans entered the picture. And I know this based on personal conversations with a guy who was a CIA station chief at the time. He served as an expert witness for me in another case. We provided Stinger missiles to the Afghan Mujahideen. This man told me that he sold them, literally put them in the hands of these guys. And they started shooting down those Russian helicopters with their shoulder-fired Stinger missiles. And within about a year or so, the Russians were gone. And Jihad had scored a huge victory. But now there was really nothing left to fight about in Afghanistan. And so all of these Arabs and Indonesians and others who had come there to fight were now suddenly left without anything really to do. And what they did was they formed Al-Qaeda. And Qaeda meaning base, I think, meaning that this is the beginning point for something big. But in a very real sense, you could say that the United States gave birth to al-Qaeda. So anyway, KSM, according to the public source information, KSM goes to Afghanistan. And after the struggle in Afghanistan is completed, he then goes on to involve himself with al-Qaeda and participates in terrorist activities all over the world. You know about September 11th, obviously. But he's also indicted in the Southern District of New York in federal court in New York for the Bojinka plot, which is a plan that they had to blow up 12 airliners simultaneously over the Pacific. Never came to fruition. And there are many, many other mosques and public buildings all over the world that have been blown up, and he's thought to be behind many of them. Not actually alleged to be behind the East Africa embassy bombings or the bombing of the USS Cole or the USS Sullivan, but essentially everything else, or at least the allegations. So then this goes on until this moment right here, till March 1 of 2003, and after which he has been placed in custody. Now, you remember, I'm not telling you any of this based on anything that he's told me. And I don't mean that tongue-in-cheek or jokingly. I'm telling you this based on public source information. The public source information indicates that after he is taken into custody, he's tortured. He is moved to CIA dark sites in various places around the world. And you may know that in Poland right now there's a huge flap that's threatening the government over the fact that it appears that Poland was involved in this and provided facilities for this. And there are lawsuits taking place in Poland where they're saying this violates Polish law. And there are allegations about other places as well. And believe me, I really do not mean to confirm or deny that any of these places were actually visited by KSM, although he and I have talked about this. But I really literally don't deny it and I don't confirm it. It's just what's been reported in the public media. And I think we can take it as a point of discussion because it gives rise to several questions, and I think it's fair and interesting to talk about them. However you feel or whatever you think about the way this all comes out, what it all means, right? So anyway, that's what the public media reports. Now, the treatment that he receives at the hands of American agents is really has been referred to as torture. And if these things have happened, I guess you can form your own opinions about what is and what isn't torture. I've talked to a lot of people military guys who've been through the SEER training, they call it, where we put our own service members through torture-like environments in order to train them for what happens if they get captured. They typically tend to have a view about whether or not this constitutes torture. But what the public source reporting says that there is striking. You may know that at Abu Ghraib, the prison in Abu Ghraib, it's clear that 2 detainees were killed. They were both killed by being beaten on the legs. They were beaten so severely and so repeatedly and so continuously that they ultimately died of congestive heart failure from being beaten having their legs beaten to a pulp. There was a lot of other kind of treatment that was put on them and on others, including stress positions where you're placed for a long time in an uncomfortable position. And if I squat down here for 15 minutes, for 15 seconds, it may feel good. It might feel good for a while. But after 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, it starts to drive you crazy when you can't move. There was sleep deprivation hung on the wall for hours and days continuously at a time. And every time you start to go to sleep, cold water is thrown in your face. So you have sleep deprivation, and you also have a stress position. You have forced nakedness. You have exploitation of phobias, dogs. You've seen the pictures from Abu Ghraib of the men stacked in a pile naked, of the men being confronted by dogs, of the men being forced to wear women's underwear on their heads. You have the lights left on 24/7. You have loud music, and I mean loud music, played so loud you can't think, white noise or perhaps rap music, which would, I think, look, I'll be 60 in a couple of months, and so rap music just strikes me as like, God, Don't do that to me, whatever you do. And but loud, so you can't think 24/7, on and on endlessly. And of course, you have this issue of waterboarding, which we've read about, and which Michael Hayden has acknowledged in public was imposed on this man. And again, I don't mean to confirm that it was. I'll tell you that the director of the CIA said it was, and let's just leave it at that. But you know what waterboarding is? It's simulated drowning. I've seen people try to do it. I've seen people do it where you can stop it whenever you want, and they film this, and they hold an object in their hand so that, and then the waterboarding starts, and when they let go, that's the signal that I can't take anymore. And you think this is going to go on for a while, but usually they drop the thing after 10 or 12 seconds. Simulated drowning, waterboarding, so these kinds of things were done to them. And you could take a number of positions on that question. You could say what Antonin Scalia says. He's an Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. And he says, come on, give me a break. If a person has, if there's a ticking time bomb in New York, a nuclear bomb in New York, and this guy here knows how to make it stop, of course you're going to torture him. You're going to avoid 10, 15, 20 million people being killed. Of course you're going to torture him. So don't tell me that torture is not acceptable. It's just a question of when. And now once you get on a sliding scale, then we can argue about whether it's okay or not, but don't give me this stuff that we should never do it. That's one view. The other view, another view, or I guess you would say the other view, there are probably hundreds in between there, was expressed by Leon Panetta recently, whom you may know has been, is to be appointed by President-elect Obama to be head of the CIA. He says this: those who support torture may believe that we can abuse captives in certain select circumstances and still be true to our values. But that is a false compromise. We either believe in the dignity of the individual, the rule of law, and the prohibition of cruel and unusual punishment, or we don't. There is no middle ground. We cannot and we must not use torture under any circumstances. We are better than that. Well, I will tell you going in that I don't propose to resolve that question for you. Ultimately, it's a moral judgment. I don't think there's any question that it violates the law, that what was done to that what is reported to have been done to these people violates the law. And I'm sorry, that was a slip-up, and it was completely unintended. I do not mean to confirm or deny that these things were done. I don't think this is a form of torture, just in case you're wondering. I'm better than that. So it clearly violates the law. I don't think there's any question about that. You know who Charles Chucky Taylor is? He's the former Liberian president, and he's been being prosecuted in Miami for having tortured people in Liberia. Great speech that the prosecutor gave not long ago, talking about what an outrage torture is, and so naturally I'm writing this down. I can use this, but Chucky got 97 years for this on last Friday. So is torture okay, or what? Here's what people who know about this will tell you about torture. And what they will tell you is that it doesn't work, first of all. And there's a great book that's just been written by a guy named Matthew Alexander. It's called How to Break a Terrorist. And he was an interrogator a gator, as he calls it. He was a gator in Iraq and in other places. And his team figured out where Abu Musab al-Zarqawi was and went and killed him. He's the head of al-Qaeda in Iraq. And they did it by interrogating prisoners. And they didn't engage in any torture. They took a different approach. If you read the Army field manual, it tells you how to interrogate people. If you read the CIA's KUBARK manual, K-U-B-A-R-K, an acronym for the CIA, declassified recently, at least parts of it, and it's published, it's available. Very interesting read. How to, according to the CIA in 1961, how to interrogate people. Torture doesn't work. People will tell you anything to get you to stop torturing them. And it isn't accurate, and actually it's not a very effective way of doing it. Jay Rockefeller, who chaired the Senate Intelligence Committee for a long time, said, and I've been all through this since September 11th. I've heard everything. I have the highest classifications. I have not seen any evidence that torture has prevented a single terrorist attack from taking place. Well, that's Jay Rockefeller. So, torture also has the effect of inflaming and really emboldening our enemies, and you need think no farther than what it would be like if a member of your own family was tortured, how you would react to that. Never mind how if you were tortured. And this has the implications of this are huge when we are at war, because like it or not, our soldiers get captured. It happens. And what right do they have sitting in an Afghani jail, held by the Taliban, held by the Iraq forces? What right do they have to say, you can't torture me? How do they say that to their captors? And it destroys our reputation in the world community. You guys, I'm sure, have seen that, have seen the reaction that people around the world have to this. And it has a very corrosive effect. And you know what's worse? It has a very corrosive effect on us. I don't like the idea that my government did this stuff. I don't think this is why we fought the American Revolution, folks. The Eighth Amendment, Prohibition on Cruel and Unusual Punishment, it got put in the Constitution. It was put into the Constitution for a specific purpose, because the Founding Fathers had a specific thing in mind. Genghis Khan outlawed abuse of prisoners in 1200. Genghis Khan, mind you. You know the joke about somewhere to the right of Genghis Khan? I mean, he didn't torture people. When he unified the Mongol Empire in 1200, outlawed it. We prosecuted 2 Japanese soldiers after World War II for waterboarding American prisoners. We prosecuted them as war criminals and convicted them and punished them for that, for waterboarding. And now we're doing it. So, I say it's corrosive, right? Why did we do it? Well, I know there undoubtedly are some cruel people out there. But I think when you look at the USA Patriot Act that was passed, 6 weeks after September 11th, and most of the people, the vast majority of our senators and representatives said they didn't read it before they signed it. Before they voted in favor of it. You know, we interned Japanese during World War II. When we're afraid, we lash out at the other. And it's endemic. It was there at the beginning. Alexander Hamilton knew it, and everybody has always known it. Genghis Khan knew it. And we have to prevent against that thing taking place, and one of the ways we do it is by exercising our First Amendment rights. And I will say, one of the other ways that we do it is, I went for a run this morning, and I ran down here up the main entrance to the university, and I was thinking about what a great place to put a religious university, because Boise, where I live, or where I live part of the time anyway, is a really beautiful place, and I love it there. But this place is like, oh my goodness, it's beautiful here, and it really just, to me, it just is bespeaks the divine at all times. And so, anyway, I run by the that sign that is there at the main entrance, and it says something like, "The world is our campus." So, you want to know why terrorism is taking place in this world? I can't tell you. It has something to do with carving up the Middle East after World War II. It has something to do with, after World War I. It has something, and after World War II. The Treaty of Versailles and And the British, the word slips me now, in Palestine, the way the British controlled Palestine for so long, Kashmir, the way we separated Pakistan and India along lines that my client is Baluchi. You know where Baluchistan is? It's like Kurdistan. It's not a country, but it was a country. I mean, you know, so you have all these people that lived across the border of what's now Iran, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, right there where they come together, just north of the Persian Gulf. All these Baluchis. Well, now they're all in 3 separate countries. That has to do with that. It probably has something to do with the Crusades. I know it has something to do with the Palestinian problem, but here's what it really has to do with. In the Middle East, the average number of computers per household is 17.8. The average number of computers per household in the entire rest of the world, I mean, which after all is not the United States, includes Africa and, you know, a lot of other places that are less developed, is 78. The world average is 78. There are 17 in the Muslim Middle East. Israel got registered 10 times as many patents with a tenth of the population of Egypt over a 20-year period in the 80s and the 90s. The education systems are backward. The unemployment rate is the highest in the world. These people are isolated. We have isolated them. We have bombed them halfway to the Stone Age. And so when you focus on these things, and believe me, torture is a huge selling point in these terrorist training camps. The idea that the great Satan tortures our people, it inflames them, as I said before. It's a great recruitment tool. But we're never going to solve these problems until we go way, way deeper. I love the idea that that this institution engages the world. I think that is such an important thing, and I applaud you for it and encourage you to pursue it. Now, what we have done with these guys, and I take it that I have about another 10 or 12 minutes. And I'm just going to tell you briefly about how military commissions work. And I guess I'm just going to kind of take you down the rabbit hole for a minute, because we do have criminal cases in federal court. We do have criminal cases in state court. And you're probably familiar with those to some degree. We see them talked about on TV and so on. And we also have court martials. We have a military justice system. Most people are aware of that. Military commissions are a different breed of cat, and that is what is being used to prosecute these guys at Guantanamo. I'll tell you what would be fun just for a second. Let me get out of this. Did I get Google Earth up here? Don't you love Google Earth? I do. So that's the United States, right? And right down there is Cuba. And when we get a little closer to Cuba, we can see that right over here on the southeast corner is U.S. Naval Base at Guantanamo Bay. And that's about as close as I want to get right there. And so there's a landing field here, and I get down there by getting on a C-130 typically at Andrews Air Force Base, which is cold and takes forever and as loud as can be, and it's a little bit like being tortured. And we land there, and then we take the ferry to the windward side. This is the windward side over here in the main part of the base. Interesting book written by Clive Stafford Smith called The 8 O'Clock Ferry to the Windward Side, which is useful reading, I think. Here in this area is the old airstrip, and this is where the ELC is, the Expeditionary Legal Complex. And in this area there are, I stay in a little trailer when I'm down there, and it's not pictured on Google Earth. I don't know exactly why, but I suspect it has something to do with security. But anyway, this is a functioning naval base, and sometimes people are kind of interested in. Wrong program. Sorry. 1 second, please. Wow. Turns out it's a small world after all. Okay, so I thought I would show you some pictures of, just show you what Guantanamo kind of looks like. I mean, it looks a little bit like southwestern Idaho, actually. And except we don't have an ocean. And so we land there at the airstrip, and they bring the dog by and sniff our luggage to make sure we haven't brought any bombs in there. And then we get on a bus, and we drive down to the ferry landing, and we get on the ferry, and the ferry's a kind of a nice trip. Sometimes they... What's really cool is they put you on a U-boat, and no, sorry, this is not a U-boat, but this is a better way to get across the bay. This little thing, it goes real fast, and dolphins tend to come and swim in the wake. It's kind of nice. And so, you approach that area that I showed you. This is what it looks like. This is that area of the Expeditionary Legal Complex. It's really beautiful there, truth be told, and. There's a plaque right here where you land that says that Columbus landed here. And he didn't see anything that interested him, so he got back in his boat and kept going. And, I don't know if that's really true or not, but there are iguanas everywhere. And I don't know if you guys have followed the Boumediene decision that was reached last summer by the Supreme Court, holding after lengthy analysis that certain aspects of the Constitution apply at Guantanamo. And the great irony to us is that there are signs everywhere that say, don't eat the iguanas, and it has never really been much of an issue for me. Excuse me, because they're an endangered species. And, so I sent a medical request in for my clients' medical records, and they said, we'll need a HIPAA release from him. And so I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess the Constitution doesn't apply, but the Endangered Species Act does, and so does HIPAA. And, like I said, down the rabbit hole. And there might be other pictures. There's a McDonald's. This is more like there's a little town outside of Boise called Kuna that we make fun of. It's a little tiny town. And I frequently say to people who are from Idaho that Guantanamo Bay is more like Kuna than Cuba because it's really like a small town anywhere. There's a McDonald's and there's a Starbucks and there are restaurants around, and so it has a kind of and it's over the hill and past, behind the wire is the term they used, and you have to have clearance to get in there where the detainees are actually held. Back there, it's a little weirder, and I can't take pictures back there, but on the face of it, what happens out in the open at the regular part of the Guantanamo Bay Naval Base is pretty benign looking, and actually, it's really fun to go for a run along the water there as the sun sets and whatever. So it's not all bad, at least if you're not in prison there. But you know what? I will just tell you quickly, because the time has grown short, but I'll tell you quickly that military commissions have a long and storied history. They started with George Washington, who is said to have taken a British spy and tried him and killed him on the battlefield, executed him on the battlefield. And traditionally, they have applied at times when people were captured on the battlefield. When you capture an enemy, you don't have to turn him loose. You can and let him go back to killing you. You can hold him until the duration for the duration of the conflict. But and they've also been used, for example, during the Civil War when the civil institutions were not functioning. But of course, 5, 6, 7 years after September 11th, neither of those things are true. And so there's really no need to be having military commissions at all. The Military Commissions Act of 2006, they first tried to do military commissions starting in about 2002, and the Supreme Court said that that was unconstitutional, that they couldn't do it. So then in 2006, Congress passes the Military Commissions Act. And the Military Commissions Act establishes military commissions. Congress passed it, President signed it into law, established military commissions. But the Fourth Amendment prohibition on unreasonable searches and seizures by statute does not apply. The Fifth Amendment, the prohibition on persons being made witnesses against themselves, does apply, but it's very watered down. Get this, the statements obtained by torture cannot be admitted. However, statements obtained by cruel, inhuman, or I can't find the language right in front of me, but it's statements which are obtained by coercive treatment and by oppressive treatment are admissible. And this is hugely important because it allows someone who engaged in torture of a detainee to get on the witness stand and say, he said this to me, and then then you don't have the person coming to the witness stand and being subject to cross-examination. So that's another aspect of it. The Sixth Amendment is, the application of the Sixth Amendment is very watered down as well. So you have a system de jure in the military commissions that is that is clearly not fair by any of the standards that we would typically apply. And then on top of it, you have it applied in really, really crazy ways. And I mean, the detainees, after having been in custody for 5.5 years, were forced to make a decision about whether they wanted to be represented by counsel in a period of, after about 2 hours of having met with counsel. Made a motion to say, give me some more time to talk to my client, Your Honor. And as I was saying to someone, if I went down here to municipal court in Provo and I had a DUI case I was defending, and I said, Your Honor, I need another 2 weeks before the arraignment, please, the judge would say, granted, next case. Motion denied. We're going forward today. And the defendants made a decision that they would represent themselves. This was done in open court now, so I can talk about it. But they made a decision that they would represent themselves. So technically, I am advisory counsel, and I'm not actually directly representing Mr. Mohammed. So, but the oddities go on and on. He's representing himself, so he says, Your Honor, raises his hand, and this is open court again. Your Honor, I need paper. I don't have any paper in my cell. The judge says, file a motion, Mr. Mohammed. What, Your Honor, like write it on the side of a watermelon and send it to you? How do I do it without paper? You have to have paper to get paper. You stand up to speak in court like I'm speaking to you right now. It's translated. A lot of these guys, all of them don't speak English as first language. This is a capital case, right? So they're entitled to, let's say, know what's going on in the proceedings. Translation can't keep up. The translators aren't good enough to keep up with. I mean, don't they do this at the UN? I don't know. But they're not doing it at the military commission. So I'm forced to talk like this, like a robot. And I can't stand in one place. I mean, you can see that, and I can't slow down that much. You can't think. You can't process information. You can't defend someone under those circumstances. And, I mean, it goes on and on and on. Discovery, you know what discovery, where they tell you what they have, they show you what they've got. Asked months ago to be given everything that was generated from when my client was in custody, when he was in the custody of the CIA, assuming that he was. And it has never been given to me. January 20th, the whole thing may shut down. Still has never been placed in my hands. And this goes on and on and on, including this protective order number 7 that I was talking about earlier, which essentially makes it impossible for me to defend him. You know, 4 prosecutors have resigned, including one just recently who said, I can't do this. They're making me hide secret evidence. There was evidence in a case of this guy, Omar Khadr, a Canadian kid. Clear evidence that he's not guilty at all of the offense, and they're not turning it over. And so Lieutenant Colonel Vandevelde just said, boys, I'm out of here. And these are capital cases, mind you. So it's not just what the Act says, the Military Commissions Act says, it's also how it's being handled. So here's my suggestion to you. This is a shameful, shameful incident, series of incidents in the history of our country. It reflects a breakdown of our values. It's not effective or workable. It has not been effective or workable. And it's something that should stop. And it's something that we should be ashamed of. And whether we will be or not, I think, remains to be seen. Dianne Feinstein, I will tell you, introduced a law once the new Congress began, proposed a law which would require all the detainees to be handled either in federal court or in a court-martial, to be released or to be repatriated, or to be held in accordance with the laws of armed conflict. And so for some of these guys, I think you can probably say you're going to be held until the end of the conflict. And you may not like that very much, but we don't have to let you go because you're dangerous. But we do have to provide you with the requirement. We have to treat you humanely. We have to comply with Common Article 3. And we have to try not to think about the fact that our president announced to everyone, told Martha Raddatz of ABC on national television that the Geneva Conventions, that Geneva is the language. Geneva doesn't apply at Guantanamo. So these conventions that we fought for and that we lobbied and that we worked and that came out of our experience in World War II, they don't apply. The president suspended them. Remember the last president? Have you seen Frost Nixon lately? I saw it on Broadway, but I hear the movie is really terrific. The last president who said, because the president says it, it's right. It's lawful, it's legal. And we know where he came out. You guys, thank you very much for coming and listening to me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.